Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Welcome to the Lee Summit Sign Department. We are going to walk you through our process from start to finish. We make signs as needed here. It's not like we just go out into the field and place a speed limit sign here, no parking here. Our traffic engineers, they go through and they'll do field studies. They'll send us down an engineering work order for us to go out, place new signs or remove signs as needed. Coming from the material, our blanks come in and they're just aluminum blanks. We can put our white, our red, our fluorescent yellow, green, whatever. And basically what it looks like is just that there. Throw it up into the roller. And once we got it covered, take it to our work table here, and Tim will cut the corners, cut all the access off to where it's lined up right. As far as the plotter and the software that we use, there's a street name sign there, and he's gonna go ahead and print that out on the plotter so you can see the plotter and how it operates and runs. There's standards for the height, even just on letters on the sign blank. Basically what we have on the computer there is it's pretty much set up to those. And it goes through, it's got a very small but sharp needle that goes through and cuts everything out, letter by letter. Once that's done cutting, our next stage would be bringing it over here. Currently picking out the sign letters right now. We call it weeding or picking or however you want to call it. Next, putting it on the transfer tape. Then after it's taped, we bring it over to the roller. That's where we apply it to the actual sign blank. And we'll roll it through one time just to get the air bubbles out. And the last stage is basically just taking the transfer tape off the front of it. And there's a finished product of the street name sign. We'll take you out to the field and show you our process that we go through. We're gonna go out and follow our sign guys and get something installed for you. This is where we check our underground utilities. Tim, you got AT&T?
AT&T's back here.
Evergy, Google, so we should be good to go. We normally put all of our stuff together out in the field. Then once the base is installed, we'll go ahead and put the post in there. We've come up to perfect. And that's how we do it. Simple. Quick.
You're invited to discover summer fun. Ride the waves in the wave pool. Jump off the diving boards. Take a dip in the Action River. And slide down the slides at our outdoor water park, Summit Waves. After a day in the sun, experience downtown Lee Summit. Enjoy gourmet pizza and delicious food for lunch. Then, cool down with handcrafted ice cream right around the corner. Summer at the Summit, Lee Summit, Missouri.
Traditionally, we think as police officers, those responding to law enforcement needs within the community. But honestly, we are there to serve our citizens, and our citizens do go into crisis. They do have mental health crises, and we're being called to those scenes on a regular basis. In order to help serve those citizens better, we did initiate the Crisis Intervention Team Program. These are officers that are specially trained to de-escalate crisis situations. Recently, we've brought co-responders onto the scene, licensed qualified mental health professionals housed within our police department, and they respond with those officers directly to those scenes where a crisis is occurring so they can interact with that citizen and get them the help they need right there on that scene.
The co-responders are either a bachelor or master level in a behavioral health related field. They wear plain clothes, they don't carry weapons or anything like that.
I have a police radio that I listen to all day. Listen for, those key words: mental health, behavioral health, crisis.
There's a lot of officers that just call for me. I have my own radio number.
I also have the ability to self-dispatch to them and say 982 is en route.
Officers en route, 914, Armstrong.
So typically I arrive after they've made it safe. I'll make contact and get kind of the rundown, and then I just kind of jump right in.
I'm like, hey, my name's Allison. I'm a mental health professional. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to take you to jail or arrest you.
Sometimes all a person needs is a voice, someone neutral, someone outside that, can listen. I do a lot of safety planning, including family, their support network, who's close to you. If they're home alone, who can come over and hang out with you today? Can we lock away your sharps? Can we put up your meds? Do you need meds? Can we get you over to the urgent care to get you assessed for your medications? Some of them also are like, oh, I'm so glad you came. This made me feel so much better.
Our main goal as the co-responders is to, one, get people connected to the services that they need, and also divert from emergency rooms and jails.
And they almost get a different view of the police responding. That lets me know you care and the officers care.
Please come up, please. How can we help you?
My husband has...
In 2020, we had 722 mental health related calls for service. 2022, by that time, 1,479. These mental health related calls for service are increasing. How we're responding to that is increasing the number of crisis intervention team officers we have available, as well as the number of co-responders we have available to respond on these calls.
So what I think is important for the community to know about the co-responder program is that we're here, we exist. All you have to do when you call 911 is ask for us. Say, hey, I want a co-responder to respond to this crisis, and we'll go. I was really struggling about 8 years ago on my personal journey with mental health, and I met some amazing social workers and amazing programs that have helped me get to where I am today. I really couldn't see myself doing anything else. We want to help, and that's what we love to do.
So I had a client, we got a call, she had some suicidal ideations, and she really felt that she had nobody. And and getting to know her story and getting to know who comes around and sees you, well, then we found a support person, and they responded immediately, and we made a plan. I called back and checked on her in an hour, and then I checked on her in 2 hours. We were able to get her into the additional services to where she talks to someone every week or more. I just took a person that really just thought they had nobody and nobody would show up for them, and show them you do. And you'll be amazed who is in your corner if you just simply say, I need a little help.
Lee Summit has you covered for all of your summer fun. Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Summer at the Summit, Lee Summit, Missouri.
Councilmember Hodges.
Thank you. I love where you guys are coming from. You're local and you're all kind of coming together. But where I'm struggling with from the last time that we talked about this, I think it was maybe October.
I actually grew up in my district. We moved here my sophomore year in high school. My parents still live in the same house, and I just went through high school here and then have stayed in Lee Summit ever since. The neighborhood that my parents live in is Canterbury. My favorite thing, and I still do to this day, is I love to go running. They have the best sidewalks. I feel like you can go for days. So now I still get to do that. Since I live not too far from them, I get to use those same routes that I took during high school, and it's just fun. All right, let's see it, Jess. Come on. We're a big soccer family. I love sports, I love to watch sports, and it's even more fun to watch sports when my kids are in it. I coach my middle daughter Josie's team. I have since kindergarten. We do the basketball, we do softball, we're gonna do volleyball, and it's just so much fun. Do solemnly swear. Something that I would like to accomplish while on city council is to get more family activities here. You know, I don't want to have to be driving my family to, say, the Kansas side or any other city but my own. And I want to be able to invest in our city and make family memories in our city.
Open the public hearing in the matter of K1 Speed, Diventures,
Crack Shack, Blue Jeans Golf.
Councilmember Hodges.
I just want to say thank you for bringing us to Lee Summit. I grew up at this. My grandpa would take us there, so I'm excited that now I can take my kids there.
Bill number 23-0, pre-construction services for the Downtown Market Plaza project.
I'm just as excited as everybody else about the downtown marketplace. I'm extremely excited about the community that it's going to bring, bringing more family things to do to the city and right in the heart of it.
When you presented the numbers, the first time you came to us, it was 25.5%, and then a lot of...
You know, people were like, oh, you know, being on council, it's not a lot of work, not a lot of... I think it was a bit of a surprise when there's so much info that you realize you just don't know. Even something as simple as sidewalks. It's like you don't realize how much goes into something like that. After a couple months, I'm like, okay, I'm finally, you know, catching the groove of how things work, learning new things, but also feel like I've got some things under my belt as well. It's been a great experience so far.
this today. August 7th, 2023, finance. Wait a minute, I got it wrong. I got a agenda. Hang on.
That's okay.
Oh my gosh. Hang on. What? How did I do that? Because that's later. We don't want that one. There we go. Okay, it's still the same date though.
Yes.
The August 7th, 2023 Legislative and Intergovernmental Relations Committee. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Demora.
Here.
Councilmember Lovell. Councilmember Pryor.
Here.
Mayor Baird. Councilmember Shields.
Present.
Okay. Thank you. Looks like we have a quorum. Next up, the approval of the agenda. Motion, please.
Chair, I move to approve the agenda as presented. Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Shields.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Councilmember Demora.
Aye. Thank
And
you.
I'm not going to call Mayor Baird and Councilmember Lovell each time. It's just because absent. Unless they show up, then I would.
They show up, yeah. Okay, thank you. That looks like we're next up is public comments. I don't see any public, but I will defer.
I haven't gotten any.
Okay. All right, we'll start off with the first item, which is the approval of the May 8th, 2023 Legislative and Intergovernmental Relations Committee action letter. Take a motion.
Chair.
Yes.
I move to approve the May 8th, 2023 Legislative and Intergovernmental Relations Committee action letter.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the action letter. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Councilmember Shields.
Aye.
And Councilmember Demora.
Aye. Passes by unanimously. Next up, 2023-5765, the discussion on the legislative priorities. Mr. Brian Head.
Just quickly, you have in your packet a copy of our little brochure that we put together last year. This is really just to sort of kick off that discussion. I really don't have a plan to walk through these or talk about them. It's as much as anything, just wanted to bring your focus to it so that you could come to our next meeting with any sort of ideas you have for changes that you would like to make. Our priorities tend to stay the same, and they have been fairly broad for the last number of years. I think Crystal has a specific priority she would like to discuss with you related to Amtrak that we may want to work in this as well. So I'll let her introduce that.
Good morning, committee. Crystal Weber, Assistant City Manager. I met with the Missouri Passenger Rail Association, which is a MoDOT rail user committee, last week, and they're working on their legislative agenda as well. And something they've been needed to include the past few years is a request to our state legislature and to the governor to fully fund the state's portion of the cost for the Missouri River Runner. So that's the train that runs through here twice a day to Lee Summit. One of the things they're asking this year, instead of just asking that 2 full round trips be funded, but that it's 2 to 3. And the reason they're asking that is due to ridership increases and also beginning to plan for the 2026 World Cup. They know based on initial demand estimates working with World Cup Committee and with the state tourism that they're going to need at least 3 round trips a day on Amtrak. So this is just a specific request that we're asking the state to fully fund those, at least the 2 existing round trips we have. The last couple of years, they didn't fund those at first, and we have to go back and request and go through a process to try to get those added. So that's very difficult for Amtrak to plan around, as well as the state to know, RoDOT to know whether it's going to have the funding or not for the train service. So.
Crystal, I do have a question. The first thing that comes to my mind, because the only way trains can move is because of power. Does Amtrak have power for a 3rd train?
Yes. They have What they don't have right now, or sure they have, they couldn't start it today. We couldn't add a third train today because they need to get cars in. And that's one of the reasons they are going to go ahead and start asking the legislature to fund the third line, is that they need time to prepare to get cars rerouted from either other Amtrak lines or the new ones that were being built, prioritized. Chicago's already doing the same for their line, as well as a few others. So that's another one of their concerns, is they don't want to get so far behind. I'm not going to call them competitor lines, but other lines of Amtrak business, because if we don't have our request in at the same time, they of course will get prioritized for being first.
Yeah, well, I realize I'm asking questions that really, I mean, they're the ones doing the presentation.
All the questions you want, and if I can't answer them, I'll get the answers.
Yeah, specifically, I was talking about engines to move the cars. I know the cars probably wouldn't be a problem, but Amtrak is on a very, very thin budget, and to pull an engine or two engines from another location probably is pretty big push.
Yeah, they feel okay that they can actually accommodate 3 lines. Also because one of them might actually be the same line, just returning a trip sooner.
Yeah.
But it's more making sure they have enough cars. And because those new cars that, we've seen a few in service, they got pulled from production due to some safety concerns. So we're already short all of those cars. So we're hoping to get those back online too, which will help.
Okay. Well, I fully support. Yeah, that's a very, very good idea. I'm glad they're forward thinking. And I believe Councilmember Pryor has a question. Maybe she turned her.
I do. Thank you. So with the increased rides, potentially to 3 a day or 3 round trips a day, would that mean anything for our train station? Would we get a bigger train station, or would it just stay the same especially with the increased traffic from World Cup and everything?
So right now, the number of round trips we get is completely independent from the type of facility that we have. I have just started speaking with MoDOT about the process of how one goes about getting a different facility or facility improvements. Now, I'm doing this just out of a learning process, as we of a city have not taken any official action saying we want to go that direction. I'm just trying to get a better understanding, because several of the stops along our particular line have either gotten major station rehabs because they have historic stations, or they've gotten brand new stations in the last several years. And we only get our $1,500 a year for minor repairs and improvements. So it's just more of a curiosity about how we get some of that money. Can I say that out loud? Yes. And just making sure we can serve our customers. Right now I'm just trying to get air conditioning put in the waiting facility and trying to get our restrooms a little safer and cleaner with some new technology that Amtrak's going to be testing out. So right now we're just working on small improvements, but I want to have the knowledge of how to move forward with something else. Part of that is because, as you guys are aware, KCATA applied for what's called a corridor ID grant. They have not received that grant yet. We won't know until maybe later this month or next month. But the corridor ID grant, as a federal grant, that will study whether, basically, for lack of a better term, commuter rail will be feasible from the new airport all the way to Lee Summit, so it can connect with Amtrak and Lee Summit. Now, granted, it's just a grant to study whether it's feasible. Let's think all goes right and it's feasible, then there is federal money available to construct those type of projects, and then also construct transit-oriented development around those projects. So perhaps it could help redevelop parts of downtown or other parts of Lee Summit along the track. So that could be a very exciting future opportunity for us. But again, it's right now, it's just a vision and a dream for KCATA in the state. But that would definitely necessitate probably some significant facility enhancements at our station.
I'd love to see a bigger station, just because so often it's full and people are having to wait outside, whether or not it's raining or cold or super hot. Yeah. So I'd love to see more shelter where people can feel comfortable. But
some other things we're time exploring with Amtrak is that if a brand new facility right there isn't available for us, what we can do maybe with a nearby facility. So if it's another building downtown or a vacant space downtown that is on that side of the tracks, what are our funding options with them, if there are any, of utilizing at least so people have a better place to rest before the train comes, to stay out of the weather, to go to the bathroom. So we're just trying to see what all of our options are right now. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Or were you done, Councilmember Pryor?
Yes.
Okay. Just one more comment, and I'll quit with the comments. But KCATA needs to put that plan out in the public, because I saw their plan from the airport to downtown and then to Topeka, Kansas. Nothing about Eastern Jackson County. And I sat up and said, what are they thinking? I love Topeka, Kansas, but there's a whole county out east. So they need to publicize their plans if they want to come to Lee Summit, because people need to know, because I'm not the only one that saw that report.
Yeah, I think they will. I think they're just waiting to see if they get the grant, because without the grant, there is no even glimpse of a plan. The reason they were able to put the one out showing Topeka is that they already have some funding and things secured KDOT. So it could be very, very exciting, especially with all the other things we have coming to Lee Summit and all of our growth coming. It could really, really change transportation for us and for our people that live here. So it could be really exciting.
Well, thank you. And then as far as back to Brian, which is the subject at hand, I did read through the priorities. I agree. I like where we're going with trying to not exactly stifle, but let our legislative priorities speak for us about stuff that the legislature is planning to do to hamper us, for lack of a better word. And I do appreciate that there is language in there that there's several items that would hamper the city, and we're saying we don't want that. So, any other questions? Brian, were you getting ready to say something? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to kind of maybe give a little more background. We started doing this type of priority about the time Mayor Baird started. I think the first year we had the old style with a lot of text and everything. And then the next year, his first year, we had that type. Then we started on this, and it's had different forms and taken a different look, but most of it is fairly generalized. We do try to vary it a little bit, so you can tell one year from the next. We do try to vary the look of it. But what I would ask you all to do is just take a look at this, and if there are other things that you can think of or that you're aware of that we need to add to this, I'm going to ask that same question of Jim Durham. And we will have Jim here tomorrow night for the council meeting. So he may give us some, and I think a great question for him is, where do you see this next legislative session heading? What are going to be the big topics? What are things that we need to be concerned about? And then to the extent he has some ideas, we can put some language in our priorities to address those things that he thinks may be coming. So it's still going to be kind of a work in progress for a little while, but I just wanted us to get started on the process and start thinking about the process.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Shields.
Thank you. So the only thing I had a question about is something that's been kind of a big topic with us in the legislature the past year is the possible landfill close to our borders. And I don't know if that really would fall under the topics that we have on the handout currently. It's sort of a land use decision, local control, but it's also about having some voice in something that's not technically in our municipality, but is very close and would impact us. And I don't know if it's really falls under this. I know we've had a lot of ongoing discussions with our legislators. It's not like they don't know how we feel about it, but I just wondered if we wanted to be more explicit or if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Ryan, any
comment? Well, I think we can maybe broaden one of these, and there's no harm in when we know that there is something specific like that is out there, and it is absolutely going to be back in front of the legislature. I mean, just because we try to do things mostly general doesn't mean that we can't have some items in there that are specific. And I think that's probably a good one to have in there that just says, emphasis on regional planning for solid waste disposal, or instead of individual project or something like that, that maybe doesn't it doesn't necessarily say what we're opposed to, but it says what we would be in favor of, which I always think is a better way to address these, is go the positive route instead of the negative.
Does that answer your question, Councilmember Shields?
It does, and obviously I'm the alternate on this committee, so I won't be here every month for the meetings. But I would like to see something like that included. I know it's a big priority for our residents. I'm still getting contacted about it pretty frequently. So yeah, I think it'll continue at least for this next year to be a big issue. So thanks.
Totally agree. Councilmember Pryor.
I was just going to agree with Councilmember Shields. I think it's important that we have something loosely stating something about the opposition or to the landfill. I think it's important to have that on there. Everyone knows where we stand, but I think it's important to have it on our legislative priorities. Thanks.
Thank you. And you're right. People locally, regionally, I should say, people know how we stand, but we're really, the landfill issue failed because of Eastern Missouri legislators, and that's what we need to try to prevent anyway. And hopefully our local legislators, even in an off session, they've been lobbying those people and counseling them and saying how important this is. But anyway, it's a good idea.
So I just quickly drafted something, and we'll make sure that this is in the minutes or in the action letter. Something like, for one of our bullets, emphasis on regional approach to landfill siting, giving all impacted communities a voice in location and planning.
Sounds good.
That's too wordy, but something like that.
Yes.
Brian, do you want to repeat that so I can get it?
I will share it with you afterwards.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on the legislative priorities? Seeing none, we'll move along. Next up is the 2023-5766 discussion of the lobbyist RFP and contract. Mr. Head.
I'm going to address one quick thing on the priorities before we move on. Just for everybody's information, we normally try to kind of work through this and come up with a final verbiage and a final design, so that in one of the first couple of meetings of the City Council in December, we can take the resolution to the council that approves the priorities list. So that's sort of our timing, and that's why we're starting in August, and we'll have September, October, November to kind of finalize it and get a final review, and then in December is generally when we take it to the council. So just want to make sure that was understood and we knew what our time frame was. With regard to the lobby contract, we do lobbyist contracts for 3 years, and this is the last year of our contract. So it's time for us to put an RFP out on the street again. We pay Jim Durham right now $1,000 a month for his services. What I kind of need feedback on is if there are additional services that you would like to see our state lobbyist, Jim, or whoever it ends up being, but thinking about what we have done in the past, what are some things that you would like to see us do on the state level that we're not doing? Or, if we're generally doing okay with regard to that, that's fine. But we try to be fairly specific as to what services we want when we issue that RFP. So we just need to have maybe a conversation, or maybe you all need to kind of think about it and send me an email about what types of services you would like to see in the RFP, so that when we go out for bid, we can make sure that we're getting a lobbyist that aligns with what our needs are. So that's why we provided you the RFP and the current agreement that we have with Jim Durham and the Britton Group.
Well, I'll start off the discussion, and I think just our just recent comment about landfill, I think that is one thing that I think we were shorthanded that everybody else had lobbyists, well, the applicant and things like that. And we were shorthanded because we didn't have and I'm not saying Jim is not qualified. I'm just saying that the muscle, I don't know what better word. We didn't have the muscle to put our position forward like we probably wanted to. So that's one of those things. I think the extensive, what I'm trying to say is then the extensive experience of a lobbyist was lacking, I think. So I see Councilmember Pryor chiming in. Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. And I was actually talking to my daughter because she was needing something. So I don't know if you said this, but is this just going forward? Are we just looking at like doing one lobbyist, or are we looking? I thought I heard talk about possibly 2 lobbyists in the future because we're growing and we have more needs than what we once did. But so that, and would our regular lobbyist, I know that whenever we visited Jefferson City, a lot of the cities have their regular lobbyists, but then they hired specific lobbyists for the landfill issue. Is that something that like the regular lobbyists would do, or would we hire, if we decided to go that route, would we hire additional lobbyists just specifically for the landfill issue, or how would that work?
That's sort of what I touched on that you probably didn't hear, was the more extensive knowledge of tackling problems like that, whether Mr. Durham is proficient in legislative items, coming and going, but just the extensive knowledge of something like the landfill. I specifically mentioned the landfill and other things that may come up in the future. We need that. We need that more extensive experience on how to actually make a difference to the legislators.
Well, and I know when you were down there, we were down there together, and we had a ton of lobbyists. Well, not a ton, but 4 or 5 come up and introduce themselves, and obviously trying to get business. But they were all, yeah.
Yeah, we normally get several bids, but I will say during our last round, the other bids were substantially more expensive.
Yeah.
Jim is kind of our general legislative lobbyist. If the question is a legislative process question, Jim's as good as any I've ever seen. Now, if you're wanting to get into the specifics of how landfills work and how their approvals process work, there may be somebody out there that knows more about that because they've worked in the industry longer. But really, what we're doing here is for general lobbyists. If we did want to go and engage somebody else on a short-term contract on a particular issue, there would be nothing preventing us from doing that. We absolutely could. We just have to make sure we had budget and we did the procurement properly. But other than that, there's no reason we couldn't do that. Councilmember Pryor, with regard to second lobbyist, what I understand is there is some money in the budget this year to find some representation at the federal level. Now, I don't want to necessarily call that a lobbyist, because if you go down the route of actually having a lobbyist, that really harms your ability on a lot of grants, because there are grants that you are either restricted from applying for if you actually are lobbying, because we have to sign off on assurances on many of our grants that say we are not engaging in any lobbying. So now there is a sort of an intermediate category federally, that's someone that represents you and talks to people here and there, but they're not a federal lobbyist. So we need to understand more, I think, about what the idea of engaging someone at the federal level is, so that we make sure that we're not harming ourselves as much as we're helping ourselves. But that was my understanding of what the potential second lobbyist was going to be there for.
Okay, thank you very much.
And to piggyback on your comment, yes, that was discussed. I actually was, one of the council members that went to Washington and talked to the Senator Schmidt's office and Senator Hawley's office, and Representative Cleaver was not there, but we did talk to him afterwards. But we kind of, that was sort of the center of the conversation, is have somebody lobbying for us in Washington, D.C. But then the conversation floated to an actual professional grant writer, because we soon found out that that's how you get money from Washington, is grants. And in fact, we were told several times, grants. Do you have a grant writer? Do you have a grant writer? Well, we don't. And so
I can tell you, I have a good friend. One of my best friends in the world is a grant writer. That is what she does. It's a whole different language. It is a whole, I don't even understand. I can sit down and read what she has written, and it makes absolutely no sense to me, but she is so successful in getting grants. So it's a completely different language, and truly, I would agree, a grant writer would be a great addition to the admin or finance or whatever team it gets put on, but that would be a great person to have on the team.
And you know, there is such, and of course I've learned a lot about grant writers. There's such a big difference between writing grants for fire department, public works, police department, and the federal government. I mean, it's a whole different ballgame. Councilmember Shields.
Thanks. No, I think this is an interesting discussion, and I remember a little bit about discussion about a grant writer, and I would definitely want the law department to keep looking into this as, you know, maybe it's some kind of a team that's needed, someone to help, as sort of an informal liaison to help identify opportunities, and then also a grant writer to help execute on those opportunities. And I don't know if that could be the same person or if those are really different roles, but it seems like the kind of thing, if you found a really effective team, it would more than pay for itself in the revenue that hopefully it could bring into the city. And then as far as our state level lobbyists, I think I was on the committee when we discussed these contracts previously. I don't know if it was the current iteration or a previous one, but it definitely was kind of a trade-off between, you know, how much you're willing to pay, what level of service you're able to get. And I'm not sure where I come down on that, because I feel like some of the advantage that the private entities have that are, you know, buying all these, you know, paying for all these lobbyist services, they're also able to make substantial political contributions, which is obviously not something that's on the table for us. And I'm not going to impugn any particular senator or representative, but there's a reason why those donations are made, and it's something that we can't hope to match. And I don't know that getting the best lobbyist service is going to help us match that either. Like, it's going to continue to be frustrating, I think. Making sure that we understand the process, making sure we understand, you know, where we can make the most difference is important. But I don't know that, you know, just what lobbying firm that we have would have made the biggest difference in those discussions. I could be wrong. I'd be happy to learn more, but it just seems like we're kind of at a structural disadvantage there in terms of whose voice is going to get heard in some of those discussions.
Thank you. Any, again, I guess to reiterate, I think, you know, the RFP will speak volumes on the expenditure versus the value of whatever, you know, we're looking for at that point, because, and I do remember the lobbyists that did apply, or that you know, that participated in the RFP. Some of them were very expensive, and they offered a little bit more, but I think time will tell. Like I said, value versus, you know, the expenditure is what it'll come down to.
And, you know, a lobbyist is only as good as the direction you give them.
Yeah.
And it would be very helpful, because I think last year we had a little bit of a disconnect between some of our efforts with things in the legislature and our lobbyists. We weren't necessarily saying, hey, coordinating with Jim as to, like, this is what we need on this funding. As far as early on trying to find bills that would get it put in there, I didn't know what we were doing. We had the same issue up on the PRI land up north a couple of years ago when we got the money, but if we had been able to coordinate with Jim earlier. So I think staff internally we need to do a better job of saying, here are the things that we are need to go after this year earlier. Jim, here it is, or whoever our lobbyist is, here it is, help us get this into a bill somewhere. We didn't take full advantage of that in the way that I think we could have.
Agreed. Any other comments on, well, I'll just follow up and say that, like I said, we will have to take a look at the RFP. I do have a question though. Is Mr. Durham, is he our lobbyist for the next year? And then it starts in 24, or is this whole new ball game here?
Yeah, it starts, I think if I remember correctly, it's October, I think, is when this expires, because we kind of put it during that off period of time. I don't remember exactly, but I know it's coming up. Yeah, it's October 31. So as of November 1, we will not have a lobbyist. That's why we need to get this out on the street.
Yeah, because we got 4 or 5, 6 weeks before the legislative season starts after that, right?
But if we're in the process now, we get a contract with somebody sometime in October, then, we're ready to go for November 1, and then pre-filing starts usually the first week or so of December, and they can be on board to start tracking for us and telling us what's what.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you. Any other questions, discussion on the lobbyist RFP?
With regard to the RFP, if y'all could take a look at it, if you have services that you would like, please email me, let me know what those are. We'll try to incorporate those in, because I would really like to be able to come to you next time with a marked up version of that RFP and show what changes that we've made. And then at the conclusion of that meeting, we can say, yes, a cleaned up version of all of this is what we want to put on the street. I really would like to be able to do that in early September, so that when I get back from vacation in early October, we can open them and you all can be making a decision.
Very good. Thank you. That leads us up to roundtable. Any roundtable discussions? Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. So this is kind of just a general question, but as far as home-based businesses go, I've had a couple of emails asking some questions about what the guidelines are or what the restrictions are as far as amount of employees they have, or the amount of traffic they generate, or even as far as adding on to their home to accompany their growing business. What are I know last year they kind of changed and maybe the lines were kind of foggy. I don't know, what exactly are what defines a home-based business and what's okay?
I would have to go back and look at our regs. I do know that during not this legislative session, but the one previous, there was a big change, and they've largely taken the city out of having much of any kind of ability to regulate home-based businesses. Now, I don't know off the top of my head exactly where that line is, but that's something we can take a look at and get you some info on.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay. And Gina, I saw you pop in.
Oh, just wanted to say that the next meeting scheduled will be September 11th.
Okay.
11:30 Zoom, if that works for everyone. I can make sure that's confirmed on calendars.
What was the date?
September 11th. Now, I won't be here.
Well,
I'll ask him to step in for me.
I know technically I can move it, though. I'm pretty sure that's a doctor's appointment day for me.
Oh. So
but I can move it.
Okay. And then I'll just ask, like I said, I'll ask him to step in for me. I'm going to take a vacation. Taking a vacation.
Great. Well, are you just going to shoot out some dates then? Since
No, it sounds like the 11th. If that works for the rest of the
I can move mine. I'll just ask him to move me to either the week before or the week after.
Okay. I'm just kind of looking at the 11th, what I've got. Yeah. Okay. All right, so tentatively, the next meeting will be Monday, September 11th at 11:30 on Zoom. And any other roundtable discussions? Okay, well, I want to thank Councilmember Shields. Thank you, Hillary, for pitching in and helping us out here. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just said anytime, no problem.
Oh, appreciate it. And thank everybody else for the information. And I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.